Namibia needs me and Namibia needs you. Welcome to the podcast that takes the week's top news stories and breaks them down in super simple terms so that we can all help each other answer the question, okay, so now what do we do about it?
Yeah.
This week we speak to someone I could just chat to forever. His name is Everett Herman Pieters and he's a second year political science student at the University of Namibia. And in his own words, he does it for the love of politics and human nature.
Yeah.
We have so much fun on this podcast.
Yeah, we'll cover very interesting stories with Everett. We will look at the political party campaigns and manifestos that have started for the upcoming elections. We'll then also look into the 5,000 houses promised by the Commerce Regional Governor. And then, of course, we will look into the gender-based violence. Let's get into it. We are going to have a very, very lovely discussion today. I think in the interest of time, let's take it from there. We have a very lovely story, our first story, happening on the different political parties that have started campaigning. So different political parties have now officially started campaigning for, regional local authority elections. So you'll see lots of rallies. I also encountered a rally in my community. Some are having drive-thrus in the different constituencies. And we all know it's because particularly councillors are running. And councillors are usually the ones that stay with you in that neighborhood. So you're basically voting for your neighbor if he's, contesting. So that is basically what is happening. A lot of posters on the signboard, the light poles. You also have a lot of social media videos on different political party candidates, saying why we must vote for them. But you see, my feeling is that a lot of times, some of them are just writing on the party's ticket, and not really on specific promises. What do you guys think?
But I think that's the biggest part of campaign politics is that you are part of a larger body that is your party. But then where the disconnect comes in is when the individual now, the councillor forgets that. Like we also had an earlier discussion, is that what is happening in your constituency is very contextual. And therefore it's very hard to say that you're running on the party's ticket because the party's interests are beyond just the region.
Yeah.
It's the whole entire nation. That look, you are part of a bigger conversation, yes, but you need to understand that it's very contextual and you need to very much
Specific
relate
needs
it,
for each
yes,
specific town, yeah.
to the specific town that you're in. And I think that's where a lot of people create that disconnect for themselves.
If all of these elections from this year, which are for our local authorities, are around party interests, and as you said, goes back to national interests. And the whole point of these elections is decentralization, is divesting power from central government and putting it also into the regions and to the municipalities and the town and village councils. And so if we're just towing the party line and we're not having strong individuals, strong associations standing up saying, this is what my region needs, these are my local interests. I love what you said, voting for my neighbor. That's the idea.
Yeah, but you see, my feeling is that there's no specific promises that are being made to say that, okay, for instance, I'm from Katutura Central. Since 1989, there's a riverbed that has like a sewage system that always floods in that area. Councillors are not standing up and saying that is a problem that I will address. So that is not specific to my constituency. So there's a lot of specific challenges, specific commitments that need to be made,
So
And that
that's
is my
what you're
feeling.
noticing.
Yeah,
and that's why
yeah.
you're saying this is a party line being towed rather than
Yes.
actually addressing specific needs.
Specific needs.
I love that. And actually, that's something that we can also, all of us, do something about, is we can ask those questions. Say, listen, okay, I know these are your party priorities, but what about my area and my region? And so we actually have a social media post we're about to share with the QR code on it that opens a mail to link. So you can just take your friend's phone, put it on the QR code, and it sends your representative, or actually your party, several parties, an email saying, send me more details about the specific candidate in my area. This is my area. Send me their details and what are they going to do about my
What are they
problems.
like as a person? What should I expect from them?
Because
Yeah.
it disconnects the person from its society and makes it a much bigger or generic conversation, because now, like you said, there's a riverbed, but then those conversations are not being had or being asked. So the question also comes in is, me as a citizen, as the person in that society, what then am I doing to kind of ask this person, look, beyond your party, beyond your bigger aims, what are you bringing to the table, especially when it comes to the context of Katutura Central? What are you bringing? And I think that's where we lose the conversation at its heart. It's because we as citizens we have lost the art of accountability. I swear, we have lost the art of holding our leaders accountable, and I will die on that hill.
Janola as well. we have the governor, regional governor, having made a State of the Region address saying, listen, we promise we're going to deliver 5,000 houses by September. September's come and gone, no houses have been delivered. In fact, the city of Windhoek has 2,000 empty units, unoccupied. And so people are saying, listen, what happened to your promise? And he's saying, it wasn't my promise, it was actually
Government's promise,
It was
yeah.
actually
The
not a
Swapo
government,
parties.
Swappy Party manifesto promise. But what is really going on there? And I think a big part of what's going on, again, is to what you were just saying about the previous story, is accountability. We don't just live in a society with the government for the sake of the government. We live in a society with a government for the reason of
Our social contract.
Right.
Right? So the biggest part of who we are as human beings is that we kind of believe that we have kind of free will, right? The free act and agency. But then we give up some of that, or most of that, to kind of become or be part of a bigger society where you give up most of these rights to your authority, which is your state. So the disconnect comes in is where the government makes promises in the attempt to fulfill our social contract. But we, on the other hand, the people that also sign the social contract, which is us, the citizens, have not or continue not to reap what we have given up. It's not my fault, it's the government's. No, it's yours because you are an extension of that bigger body. And that bigger body is what you are supposed to hold accountable. What we have lost is leaders that take accountability for where they have misstepped or where they have gone wrong.
Well, Janella, you know how you and I are always like, you're like personal responsibility, I'm like systematic responsibility. Did you see how beautifully he just drew a circle around that, saying, we voted for the system, therefore we're accountable for the system, we are part of it, therefore we must hold it accountable. Connecting like your and my priorities so beautifully, wow.
I think on the flip side of that coin, according to the latest statistics, since 1989, when the National Housing Enterprise was started, they have built 18,000 houses since. Now, the Namibian problem.
You say that as though it's a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm coming there. I'm coming there. The Namibian problem is not really that government does not do. It's that really that government does not do enough. In terms of service delivery, 18,000 out of, let's say, 200,000 people that need housing, it's not scratching, even the service. So my feeling is that, and this is also what a lot of young people share with us through the Namibia Needs Me project, when we engage them even at university level, is that yes, as a country, our potential is here, but our development is here. And the frustration is caused by this gap, So a lot of times young people just feel like, yeah, things are happening, but it does not happen enough for me to say, now I can trust, now I can,
And my biggest not argument, but view of this is also that we are in a new administration. And the nature of new administrative culture is that you make a lot of promises. You make sure that you come in with the vibrancy that the society needs. Already we are seeing that to a degree that we have been overpromised. We have been overpromised, and these promises come with real consequences because there are real people behind the laws that are supposed to be made or the projects that are supposed to be passed. It's real people that have an ambition or hope for these things to happen. So that in and of itself just shows us that a new administration, as you said, we don't do enough. It's because we do a lot in the beginning and then we fall off.
And you know what, Everett, if you look at the scale of the problem, there's an argument to be made for the fact that we've actually been under-promised, weirdly. Because the scale of the problem, 1 million people are living in informal settlements. 1 million people in this country of 3 million. It's huge. It's huge. And that's lacking as like a real dignity in your ability to stand up for yourself and have agency in a democracy every day. In the Khomas region, 47% of us live in impoverished housing units. 47% of the region, right? That's about 232,000 people.
Just to give perspective, if you're in a room with 10 people, that means at least 4 or 5 come from an impoverished home.
I feel like you're even understating it. At least 8 of them come from impoverished households.
So in that context, for us to say, we're going to give you 5,000 houses, it's like, really, that's less than a drop in the ocean. So we really have to be aware of the scale of the problem here. These are a lot of people who need real help and real action. Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah is saying that she's supporting the Shack Dwellers Federation. The Shack Dwellers Federation, if there's one message I want to leave everyone with, and perhaps to just link them at the bottom of this video, is doing incredible work. Let's all get behind them, support the data they collect, support the work they do. our key story for the day is Purple Hearts. You know, there's been just another surge in really violent crime against women and children in South Africa. Not only to raise awareness, but to declare a state of emergency. Being picked up in Namibia by slut shame movements, who's got change.org, what do you call it? Petition, thank you, that we can all sign. What are your thoughts, feelings? You know, this is such a depressing topic, and yet it gets us all so emotive for good reason.
Greatest contributor to GBV, particularly let me say in the Namibian context, is when you have a lot of young people that come from impoverished homes. Let me just use the one that I know happens a lot, even from the community I come from, which is Katutura Damara 7, is that young ladies will come from a very impoverished home, and in order to, let's say, provide for the family because there's no one working, she's forced to fall in love with an older gentleman that she knows, can provide. So sometimes victims stay in these kinds of situations because of the financial dependency, I feel. And that is why GBV is also, the moment you see unemployment increasing, GBV will increase. Why? Because of the things people are willing to do, for bread and butter issues.
Such an important point. I would want to just say, instead of suggesting that this is an act of falling in love, let's call it by its name, which is transactional sex. And transactional sex, yes, of course, is exacerbated by poverty, but is classless. Transactional sex, because of the fact that we all live in a patriarchy, transcends class. GBV transcends class. So as much as, yes, I love your emphasis on the fact that it's exacerbated by psychological hardship and friction and triggers such as poverty, it's not unique to people who live in poverty by any means, right?
And also, my biggest takeaway from this type of conversations as somebody that has been in households where GBV was a constant and reoccurring issue is that what we don't address is the fragility of masculinity in a lot of men that perpetuate these harmful ideologies. It's not enough for the feminist movement to have this conversation in isolation. Men's mental health and women's mental health, because we live in a collective conscious, is very important. But the difference in what I see is that, and it's not victim blaming, not victim blaming, but perpetrator, I'm not pointing out a perpetrator, is rather that you cannot have conversations on GBV without having a conversation on why do men perpetuate these ideas. And then if we go into why men perpetuate these ideas, you can't have a conversation on men's mental health and the perpetuation of these harmful violences without having conversations on misogyny, without having conversations on homophobia, without having conversations on transphobia, because all these things are so interlinked.
And you were talking earlier about performative activism, and that's kind of what always triggers me about this as well, is that we are aware. We are aware, we are hurt, we are angry. That job has been done. What we don't know what to do is what to actually do about it. And so very few of us are bringing things into the conversation like poverty, economic justice, trauma, mental health. That this is not necessarily a men's-women's issue, but a power issue. And a lack of resilience and a lot of fragility. Yes. And so I really thank you for bringing those things in. But what do we do about it, guys?
I think, Ethne, because it takes a community really to address these things, the first thing that we, or even you as an individual citizen, can do is report. A lot of times when we see these things, it happens, you will hear a shout. You always hear the beatings. So as a neighbor, or as a relative, report these things so that the correct authorities can step in and help these people, because oftentimes the victims themselves protect the perpetrator, both, let's say, maybe even for financial reasons, or maybe even of some kind of Stockholm syndrome or whatever. But the idea is that we as a community must come together and report these things.
When you're a child that is around that environment, then not even innately, but you would assume that you would kind of put yourself in a space where you perceive and see that as love, and you perceive and see that as something that's right. So the witnessing victim is what necessarily we don't often target, is the children in these abusive households, and how they then will be the future perpetrators and future people that men morph into these abusive relationships. So my biggest take is to make sure that the child is heard, and that the child is seen, and that the child understands that these situations are not situations that need to be rebirthed or created again.
I couldn't agree more. For me, I really wish that we could have more mental health professionals in this country. I look at the amount of money we put into the NDF, or the police for that matter, and these are first responders, but they aren't a cure to the problem. better mental health, better real care, and I'm afraid to say better economic equity in this country would go a long way to curbing GBV. Thank you for your input. That was such a good conversation.
Wow, what a lovely discussion we have had. Namibia Needs Me needs you to subscribe to this channel to support our work. But of course, if you need more civic education content, more on democratic principles, visit us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, our very valuable Namibia Needs Me website, a database resource made just for you.